Screenwriters, and welcome to Writing for Screens, the screenwriting step-by-step live streams, episode 39, in which I am going step-by-step through my process of writing a TV pilot in order to let you look over my shoulder and see how it is done, to try and demystify this whole script writing thing, because there's just so much stuff out there that is intimidating and frightening and unnerving, and I wanted to try and make it look a little more doable. Anyway, this is not the only way to write something. This is just my way. It's just a way that works for me that I wanted to show because I don't see anybody showing you how to do it. So here we are. Oh, look, there's people here. Maria Espino is here. 99 Precinct is here. We got folks watching. That's very cool. Good. I am glad. Okay, weirdly, on my little tracking thing, I have one person watching, although I seem to have two people talking to me. All right, technology is endlessly fascinating to me. I am here every Monday through Friday, if I can do it, at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And while I am here, you can ask me almost anything if you are in the chat. But if you are not here, if you are watching this on the video screen of YouTube, you can still ask me a question. You just have to go to writingforscreens.com and click on Contact Me, which is just all over the place. On every page, there's a button. And if you don't want to do that, you can just put it in the comments of this or any video. You can ask me a question anywhere on my channel and it will go through me and I will try to answer it either there or here. Okay, that is the boilerplate. We are now going to be getting right to work. Let's get right to work, because if we don't get right to work, we don't get stuff done. All right. We are working our way through the outline. We are going scene by scene and trying to make sure that if I were to sit down and try and write the first draft, I would not have a panic attack because I had run into a spot where I just hadn't figured stuff out. That is the goal. The point of an outline is a map, a plan, a path, a way to say, I know what I'm doing day to day. You don't have to solve everything. You just need a list of the scenes that you are trying to write. That's the whole point of an outline. I'm going to emphasize it with a graphic. An outline is a list of scenes. That's what it is. It's a things to do list. It's a place to work out what's in your script so that when you're trying to write it, you don't go off on some weird tangent that gets you lost and you don't find yourself saying, I don't know what to write now. That's what an outline is. I think it's incredibly important because there are so many questions. Writing is a process of questions. You just ask questions all the time. What is this scene about? What is this character like? What do they want? What do they say in this moment? How do I get this information across? Questions, questions, questions. And that is where the outline helps, because you can ask them. You can literally go into the outline and ask yourself, what happens? Is this breakfast? Is this morning? How do they talk? You can say, where is she from? And then figure enough of it out that when you're writing it, you're not trying to figure it out, you're trying to express it. That's really important. Let's get out of the page there. The whole point is when you are writing, you don't want to be figuring out what to write. You want to be figuring out how to express the thing that you want to write. Often it means discovering, often it means crafting and sculpting and creating, but still you don't want to be thinking, I don't really know what this is about. That's what you want to avoid, and that's what the outline is for. Hello, Kirby Light. Okay. What are the differences between the pilot outline and the series outline in your files there? That is a super duper question, which in fact I was going to get into. Let's just talk about that. Here, okay, I've got the pilot outline. As you noticed, there is the series outline, and then there is the overview. And this is just my way of breaking things down into documents that I can work with. It's not like there's an official right way to do this. It's just how I've worked it out to keep my sanity while I was working for Hollywood. So the way that this works is the pilot outline is just the list of scenes for the pilot episode. It's the script outline. It's the what's going to happen scene by scene. The series outline is everything that I've thought of that needs to go into the series that isn't in the pilot. Eventually, I will have to form that into a document which I can show people, because when you write a script, you write a pilot script, you write the pilot, and then someone will say, well, that's a cool pilot. I like it. Where is the series going? And you need to be able to answer that. You don't need to tell them every single step, but you probably will need to have a basic sense of where the series is going. And that means, for me, I needed to make an outline of it. That outline, that's a spare parts department. That is all the stuff that I think of that would go into the series, but isn't in the outline. But it's not, I wouldn't show that to anyone. You don't, this is crucial. Outlines are for you only. You don't show your outline to other people. I am doing this so that you guys can see it, because we are working to here. We are learning the process of working. But in a professional setting, you are very wary about showing anyone your outline. It's your sketch pad. It's your place where you do the job. It's like showing them your desk. It's where you work, where you think. When you have thought it out, you can show them a version that is readable. But this is not readable. This thing that I'm working on here is not. I wouldn't want anyone to judge me on this. Don't judge me. I am showing you the messy process by which stories are created. So the answer is, this outline for the pilot outline, stops when the pilot stops. But there's lots of other scenes that I've thought of. Like sometime down the line, we're going to have to find out that Xena is the murderer. Sometime down the line, so-and-so has to do this and that. I wanted to put those somewhere. So I put them in a series outline. That's not going to be actually a full outline of the series. You could even just call that the series scrap pile if you wanted. But eventually, there will be a series Bible, series pitch document. Bible is actually a specific television term for a show that is actually running, in which they keep track of all the decisions they have already made so that they don't contradict them later. In season 5, they don't want to say somebody came from Kansas when in season 2 they said they came from Philadelphia. The answer is, when you have conceived of the series, you need a place to put that stuff. I call it the series outline. You could call it anything you want. And we are going to need to get into that soon, because I hope to get through this pilot outline pretty soon. Which brings up today's process. First of all, I wanted to say I had skipped this last session, but this scene where they wake up, I had made a note to myself. He asks if she is able to consent. And I thought that's a note that nobody else would understand, because it was just jotting down a thing I knew I wanted to add in, which is that he asked this because he is conscious it is the proper thing to do in the contemporary world. It's not the world he grew up in, but I wanted to show that he is very aware of what's right and wrong and what's happening in the world. He's a journalist. He knows that these are questions of ethics and behavior, and that he takes them seriously. So I just made this note that he very self-consciously asks. He's doing the things more for his own purposes than to actually find out the answer. Anyway, that was just it was a little character note. And as I said, the things I am writing here are notes for me. So they make sense to me. Anyone else reading them would say, why would you bother to add that? That's like a politically correct note to yourself. And that's not actually what I meant. I meant that the character is conscious of the need to do that. Okay, so moving along. That was how far we got. And now we're going to get into a big section where they're talking to each other, they're getting to know each other, and we're getting to know them. And the question for me here is, how much do I outline this? Because I am pretty experienced. I have written a lot of scripts. I know how to do this. I don't actually need entirely to outline this. I know how to write that scene or series of scenes. And the truth is, it would probably be better to figure that out as I'm constructing the script. I know now that this is going to be a sequence where they are sort of getting to know each other, and we're going to find out about her history, her life, her marriage to George, and what it did to her, which I have written in other episodes here, trying to explain who she is and what her relationship is to the murder victim. And so I've got all these notes already on what Madeline needs to talk about. And this is only a tiny bit of what we need to know about Madeline. And likewise here about Norman, although there's some stuff here that isn't. Let me see if this is in the overview. I wrote a lot of character notes here. And interestingly, I seem to have lost them. Did I lose them, or did I put them in the rest of the outline? I'm just skimming here. I'm figuring this out. This is all about the murderer. But I had some notes about George and his relationship history. And what's interesting is I don't know where I put that. That's fascinating. Okay, somewhere in here, there it is. You see, I knew I would find it. This is why we do this. This is why we create places to put things so that we don't lose them. I created a character here. And okay, I'm going to cut that from here. I'm going to lose my N, but I can live with that. I'm going to save that. I'm going to close that. I'm taking it out of it was just in a holding place. I had put it in the series outline. The series outline is everything that I had thought of that wasn't going to fit in the pilot. And now I'm going to put it here because it is going to come up here. We are going to have to learn about Norman in this sequence. So look at that. Look at this. You are seeing this at work. I am taking things from the series outline and I'm putting them in the pilot outline because that material is going to go there. But if I didn't have a place for it in the pilot, I don't want to throw it out. I don't want to lose it. And I didn't want to clutter up the overview. The overview is like my crib notes, this is the basic essentials. Not every step, not every detail. So I needed a place to put that. So I created a series outline. All right. So the point here is now, this is like a couple of pages of stuff between Norman and Madeline, and I am not going to further outline that. I am not going to worry about how I write that because I am confident that I can discover it as I go. Now, if you are not as experienced as I am, if you have not written 25 scripts, you might want to think this out more. You might want to really outline the steps. This is sort of like a little one-act play. this section of the script. We've been bopping around all over. We've got murders, we've got groups, and now we just have two people in the house dealing with their weird relationship that has begun very abruptly. And I want to give that time. That's going to be a whole thing. That's going to be a sequence. They may even go out and come back. They may go do some errands or something. I don't know. All I know is that I want to spend a hunk of time, maybe 10 minutes or so of the pilot is going to be this section. And I know that all of this stuff is stuff that I want to work with it. So I am just leaving it in here as this massive, massive hunk of philosophy and character insight. And I'm not going to worry about that right now, which actually really is great because it means we're moving fast. Burgundy, not only will I answer this question, but I didn't answer another one of yours and I wanted to. So hang on. I'm so glad to see you here. Will I share the script writing process as well? Of course. That is what I am doing here. I am going to actually, I'll probably do some off-screen work because it's just a lot of work to write a script. It's hours and hours and hours of creating. But I'll probably show you a fair amount of that to the extent that you can tolerate it, cool. To the extent that you can't, you can just, zip on down the timeline. Anyway, but wait, I need to very briefly look at some notes. I made a note. I'm going to look it on my phone so that I do not pull up my personal notepad and put it into the video. But I did make a note to myself to answer a question from you. And I can't find it now. That's too bad. That's frustrating. I had something that you asked me that I wanted to answer. I swear to God, I will get this. All right. In the meantime, you know what I'm going to do? I'm trying to figure out how to do this so that I don't open. Oh, wait a second. Show. I'm going to show pages. Okay. I'm going to leave our view on pages while I open my note-taking app. There it is. Okay. Yeah. Here's the deal. Okay. Burgundy the other day. Oh, gosh darn it. Burgundy the other day asked a question about writing for kids. And the question was, how do you, is there anything special about writing for kids? And mentioned especially, how do you keep it, how do you deal with wanting to be simple, but not wanting to be simplistic? And that's a complex question. And it took time for me to formulate what I think about that. The point about simple is simple is not easy. Simple is not dumb. Simple is simply clear. Simple is well defined. And that's hard. And frankly, simple is something that you need to really have in your toolbox at all times, no matter whether you're writing for kids or adults or anything else. Simple means you've really thought through a question and made a specific and clear choice and understand the alternatives. This character is this. This story is about this. That's what the simplicity of good writing is, and that's what good kids writing is. Good kids writing can be very complex. If you want to see like complicated writing structures, A Bug's Life, an early Pixar movie, is immensely, there's a lot of moving parts to A Bug's Life. And it's a phenomenal script and a phenomenal movie. But the point is, you've got a lot of characters with a lot of emotions and a lot of problems and a lot of technical things going on in their lives. But it's still simple. It is still, each person, bug, in the story is clear. They have a clearly defined, simple personality, desire, problem, all of those things. That's what simple is. And what's simplistic is when you do that in a shallow, superficial, thoughtless way. Simple is when you are clear. Simplistic is when you are recklessly taking the easiest definition from somewhere else. That's what simplistic is. Simplistic is when you just do stereotypes, when you just do cheap gags. Simplistic is when you are not giving things the weight that truly simple things have. And so that's really what I wanted to get to, is the idea that everyone should constantly be trying to make it simple, at least in themselves. The expression of it may be complex. When you look at a Gothic cathedral, okay, that is one of the most ornate architectural experiences you can have. There's leaves and columns and arches and windows and alcoves and all this stuff, but it's simple because the progression is clear, the shape is clear, the areas of texture are clear. So that's simple, even though it's busy. And that's what you want to do in any writing, but especially with kids, is don't be shallow. Don't be easy. Actually think about the choice and be honest and heartfelt and true in your simple things. And then you'll be writing good for kids or for adults. I hope, Burgundy, that gives your question some thought. That's what I did. I thought about it. And so that puts us back here. All righty. So, as I said, I just took this enormous hunk of character work, this little one-act play about George and Madeline, and I said, I got enough of that to know that I can work it out. So that means that we are now almost at the third act. So I'm going to take a little pause now to answer some other questions, because you guys are asking other questions, and I'm going to take a look at them. All right, so let's see. Kirby says, when you end an episode of a show, should it set up the next episode, like a cliffhanger or something? Pretty much always. You certainly don't want it to end so conclusively that there's nothing left. Almost always, if an episode is a part of a story, there will be unanswered questions. Ending an episode is an interesting issue. You need to end it in such a way that it feels like a satisfying conclusion to whatever the topic of that episode was. Episodes don't have topics. Like, episodes have a chosen field of endeavor, a sort of question that is raised. It can be very subtle. It can be, and there's always just plot to get through. Like, this is a hunk of plot. If you divide a story into 6 or 10 or 25 episodes, each part of that long story has to have steps of the story. That's what constructing a serialized story is all about, is saying, what are the natural steps? What are the complications and changes and reversals and reveals of this story? And that, once again, man, you guys are really like thematically strong. That is where you get to the series outline stuff. Because in any given episode, you're going to outline the beginning, middle, and end of that problem. But the series outline is when you look at the big picture, which is stuff like the arc of Madeline and Norman's relationship, what each one of them need and what each one of them are going to have to go through to come to the ending that I want to get them to. That sort of thinking you need to do someplace outside of the episode thinking. The episode, you have to say, okay, now in this part of it, they have to go on the run because the house has become dangerous. And so it's an episode about hitting the road after having been in one place. Or it's an episode about how when they get to a certain place, they have to get information from a certain person. Almost every episode has some main thing to do. And the answer is the episode has to end with that thing partly resolved. It doesn't have to be fully resolved. Very often these topics last several episodes. I hesitate, I'm always hesitant to use examples from existing shows because how many people have seen, like I'm currently rewatching The Sopranos, so I have The Sopranos in my mind as I'm noticing the way that is built. And so a certain episode will sort of focus on Carmela's relationship with the priest. She has this sort of flirtation with the priest that is both a moral flirtation and a sexual flirtation, but both of them recognize that they can't have a sexual relationship, so they sublimate it into moral questions, and in his case, into food and watching movies. That relationship lasts through the whole season, on and off through about 4 or 5 episodes. And so in each step of it, there's one where she's very, very tempted to be with him. There's one where she feels sort of betrayed by him because he's also having a relationship with another woman that she knows, a friend of hers. Each one of those could be the subject, the story hunk of an episode. Is that making sense? You almost always want to end with something decisive and hooky that will make people say, yes, I want to watch to see what happens next. It's crazy not to do that. It can sometimes be about a tragic ending to a subplot, which has a certain finality to it. But the question is, what will happen now that this tragedy has happened? Would you agree that in the pilot episode of a TV show, you want to define the character, define their need, and push them into a new situation right on that first episode? Yes, that is exactly what a pilot episode has to do. With the complication that's often you have ensemble shows, so you have to define a bunch of characters and their situation, and then push that into a new situation. That is what we are doing in ours. I am going to be defining Madeline, Norman, Xena, and the group, and they all have to be at least partly known, locked into the audience as like, oh, that's that type of person. And then by the end of our pilot, we need to say, okay, these people who have been dragged into this situation by the murder of George suddenly find themselves personally having to deal with the murderer. That's the twist. That's the thing that makes everyone say, well, what's going to happen next? That's the end of the pilot. And then you spend the rest of the episodes watching these characters adjust to that situation. I wouldn't say adjust to that situation. I would say deal with that problem or work to overcome that threat or obstacle. I would not say the series finale shows the price paid, returning to familiar situations and how they've changed. Definitely not. I am a big disbeliever in this formula that you have to start someplace, disorder it, and then come back to that order. That is a shape. It is not the shape of a story. You might want to tell that story, or you might want to tell the story about how something is breaking down and a new thing is being born. You might want to, there's so many ways to tell a story. You want to have a concept in your mind. You want to say, this is a story about loss of order and regaining that order. Or you might want to say, this is a story about someone destroying an order in order to get something better. Those are both completely valid stories, and you need to know which one you're doing, but you don't have to do the returning to order. Well, that's what happens. I do sometimes go on a bit. I will indeed. Yes, I will answer as best I can any question, because this is the stuff you have to think about as a writer. This is the stuff that I have spent the past 30 years thinking about, and so I got it in my head. And I love to let it out, partly because it just seems sad to have done all this work and be the only one who has the answers that I've figured out. They're not the only answers. Lots and lots of people have done good work in figuring out how to be a scriptwriter, and I strongly advise you to study as many of them as you can and listen in your heart, in your soul, for that little ping, that little click where something makes sense to you. And you write that down, grab it, simplify it, make it your little note card of, oh, this is how this kind of story works, or this is what a pilot does. That's valuable because you have to figure it out for yourself as you go along. All right. Should I continue with this? You know what? I don't think so. We're sort of getting to the third act, and I think that will be the next episode's work. And thus, I think we are going to be heading towards stopping for the day. I am here to answer any questions. I will give a minute or two of sort of riffing and blathering on to give people a chance to ask a question. If you have one, type it into the chat. I want to give some time. Sometimes as I am pushing the little button that says end broadcast, I will see a comment come up, and I'll be like, damn, but it's too late. So I just want to offer you now's the time. If you have another question today, ask it. Otherwise, next week we will take on the third act, and also gonna do another full session of Ask Me Anything. And I got some notes. I got somebody sent a comment, a detailed set of questions and criticisms about this project, about the Untitled Podcast Killer project, and I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what it's like to get notes, because that's an important part of the writing process. It's the part that happens when you're not doing everything by yourself, when you are dealing with the many, many voices that you will deal with as a writer. Also, wait, there's something else that is really important. Figure out a damn title. I'm going to just make a note for myself that this is a thing to do next week. We ought to come up with a title for this thing. Titles either come really easily or really slowly. It can be quite hard to figure out a title. So better start now. Okay, so guys, I am going to take off. I am going to see you next week.